Good afternoon, Mr. Togun.
Good afternoon. I take it that's Caroline.
No, that's Titi.
TTC. We've not spoken in a long while, so I've forgotten how your voice sounds. You see?
Trust you're doing good. And good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome once again.
Thank you.
Hello.
How have you been?
Afternoon.
Sorry, you can start.
Good afternoon to everybody who is here. And I especially want to thank our panelists who have joined us for today's conversation on the process of carrying out university technology transfer and commercialization. If I may begin with a quick introduction, we have, and I'll do ladies first, we have Professor Anna Fratini Filetti. She's the Executive Director of Innova. Innova is the Technology Transfer Office of the University of Campinas in São Paulo, Brazil. It is currently the largest, the first TTO to be established in Brazil and in Latin America, and it is the largest and most successful TTO so far in that side. We also have Dr. Caroline Allen-Ogena. She's the director of the Entrepreneurship Development Center at Federal University of Technology, Mina. Then we have a gentleman who has lived, worked, and breathed technology transfer for more than 30 years, Tom Hockaday. He is the former managing director of Oxford University Innovations TTO, and that it is called Oxford Innovation Limited. Theirs is a different model from Innova, as we will get to hear later. Tom has also authored a very interesting book on university technology transfer, and we'll have a few questions and talk about the book in a while. I found it a very interesting read. Congratulations, by the way, to you, Tom, for that wonderful production. Then a good friend of ours, a Nigerian who has done us proud, Professor Adekunle Adeyeye, who spent 2 decades in the research community in Singapore, and he has now joined Durham University. Adekunle, good to see you. I must confess, I had to go and check the dictionary for the meaning of spintronics when I was putting. He's a globally renowned researcher in the field of nanotechnology and spintronics, and is also a Nigerian. So we have 2 hours for this conversation, and I think we want to make very good use of that time. So I'm going to ask Anna to give us a quick presentation on what Innova is, what they do, and their journey over the years. Over to you, Anna. We'll take up the conversation thereafter.
Thanks, Theo. I'd like to say hello to all my colleagues, panelists, and all attendees. It's a great pleasure to be here today to discuss innovation. I have a brief presentation. I will share my screen, just a minute. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Let's start. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Ana Fratina. I'm an executive director of Innova since May this year. And I'm a full professor at the School of Chemical Engineering at Unicamp. So I used to be an inventor for 20 years, and now I'm managing to be an executive director of our agency of innovations since May. About Unicamp, it was established in 1966. It's a public university of the state of São Paulo, so it's tuition free. We have focus on high quality teaching and research. We have services to society, like hospitals, and we make bridges between academy and the industry. And we have support to innovation and entrepreneurship. And it's important to say that Unicamp was established to promote applied research since its beginning. To ask me about the issues that lead us to success. And here we list somewhat the cause of the success. We are established in the state of São Paulo, is the most developed state of Brazil, is responsible for about 30% of Brazilian GDP. So we have many industries in the region. We were considered the third university in the Latin America with top grades in research criteria by the Time Higher Education in July this year. And we have a huge alumni networking since we have about 1,800 academic staff and about 40,000 enrolled students. Sorry. About Innova Unicamp, prior to the Brazilian Innovation Law of 2004, Innova became innovation agency at Unicamp, replaced the previous TT office. And we have an expanded mission to identify opportunities and promote activities for innovation and entrepreneurship, expanded in favor of a sustainable socioeconomic development. We have 4 divisions. Each division has an expert leader. The 4 divisions work together to promote an actual ecosystem of innovation. The divisions are intellectual property, TT, and collaboration projects, entrepreneurship, and science park, and the communications department and marketing. Our main KPIs, we have, along the years, we have increasing invention disclosures, but we are managing to keep the patent applications. We have a portfolio that has more than 1,000 patents, and we have about, in 2020, about 107 ongoing licenses. And some expenditures values in research and development at Unicamp. We have contracts established with companies that decreased a lot in 2020 because of the pandemic, but we have reached almost $35 million in 2018. And it's important to say that the number of patent applications with industry sponsor increased to 35% in the last 10 years. Another point that is important is to say that we have an aggressive communications team that support us to communicate our activities for society. We have a showcase website, we send emails, we work with social media to display successful licensing cases and also to give a brief description of our intellectual property. Our TT team is diverse and dynamic and so careful with deadlines. The director is an attorney and we have 4 agents with different graduation. About the licensing contracts, it's growing along the time. We have in 2020 about 48 TT signed, which is double of 2019. And several of these agreements are unfunded because it involves life science technologies because of the pandemics. And the revenues including royalties, we have reached last year about $400,000 a year, which is a great deal for our country. We have a roadmap for our students that want to be entrepreneur. We have disciplines, we have a challenge competition, we have workshops along the year, and we have an incubation program that in last term turned research results into spin-outs. We have also the tech park, scientific and technological park, and which companies can be part of the park? Companies with research and development agreements with Unicamp, incubated a startup or spin-outs, and organization from government. And why they want to be here? Because it's an important ecosystem of innovation for the region and for the country. We have 35 companies, more than 400 direct jobs, 8% dedicated jobs for research and development. We have a global partners program with 9 members from 6 countries. And we have a cooperation for 4 or 5 years with the University of Cambridge Enterprise for training innovative tech transfer staff, for spreading new practice in intellectual property commercialization, given training from UK IPO and praxis, and also for spreading practice of education in entrepreneurship. Important to say that with this contact of staff from here and there, Innova realized the importance of its approach to work, intellectual property, tech transfer, park, and the entrepreneurship working together. It's very important and is very close to the approach of Cambridge. Our the highlights, the points that we highlight in Unicamp innovation policy is the academic staff is allowed to receive innovation scholarship. Academic staff is allowed to honor a spin-out, not to be administrator, but they can be owner. The university is able to assign IP or know-how rights to company in front of revenues, such as access to technologies, milestones, and royalties. And we are allowed to perform exclusive licensing only using specific codes in our website. There's no need for bidding. In conclusions, the main aspects that led Innova Unicamp to success, Unicamp was established to develop applied research. We are located at an industrialized region of the country. Unicamp has high acknowledgement from society. We have a wide alumni networking, and the number of patent applications with industry sponsor is rising, which is good. Innovation agency Innova, our team deals with different purposes together, IPTT, Science Park, and entrepreneurship. Our staff has an aggressive digital marketing process. We are diverse and we have diverse and dynamic tech transfer team, assertive and self-confident, and know the customer. We are well-structured. We have well-structured roles and agreement proposals. And our advances in last years, we have some regulations in Brazil in 2018 that allows know-how and patent right assignments, academic staff as owner or of spin-outs, simplified procedures for exclusive licensing, and the scientific researches and spin-outs using the same lights, and so on. In 2021, the law of startups creates sandbox regions, protects social capital invested in startups, and define startup clearly. So this law was very important in recent years. Our bottlenecks, Brazil has decreasing government expenditures in research and development, and we have just less than 40% of funding come from industries. We have bottlenecks with the time between academy, industries, and government. It seems to be different. We have to deal with timing every day. Innova agency, this is a great problem. Innova agency is not allowed to funding spin-outs or startups because Innova is not a legal entity apart from the university. We are part of university as a department. And this is under revision at the Unicamp, and this is our future. We are trying to change the situation because the innovation law of 2018 allows. So thank you very much for your attention. Please stop, turns to you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for that introduction to Innova. I'm going to ask Kunle a question now, but I want to leave you with a thought when we eventually come back to you. Innova was set up in 2003. That was before the Innovation Law of 2004, which now sort of made it mandatory or required other universities to do the same. I would like you to think about how you will speak to that thought process. What did UNICAMP see that other universities were not aware of, that even before the law came, UNICAMP had gone in that direction? Just hold that thought. When I come back to you, that's what we're going to talk about. So Kunle, quick one. We've heard about Innova, and I'm sure our audience would now begin to have an appreciation of what a TTO is all about. From the perspective of a researcher, how has your own engagement been with TTOs in the institutions where you have worked with? Can you give us some context that will sort of spotlight some of the things that Anna has spoken to broadly? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tope. And I want to thank the organizer for inviting me to be on this panel. I will say broadly, my level of engagement, the frequency of engagement, and the quality of interaction with TTO has varied over the years. And it has improved significantly as I got established in my research. Like you just said, I would like to put this in context. 20 years ago, when I started my research career at the National University of Singapore, the Singapore economy was based mainly on manufacturing. For example, Singapore was the largest producer of computer hard disk and a lot of electronic components. Most of the multinationals, they have their R&D in the US, but only manufacturing in Singapore. Again, when we look at the university system then, all the institutions are more or less teaching-based institutions. They are more or less training graduates to serve the industry. So there were little or no interaction with TTOs then. However, towards the end of the 90s or early 2000, the Singapore government decided to make a strategic change in the way the economy grew. They wanted to move from manufacturing-based to knowledge-based economy. And in doing so, they decided to invest heavily in human capital and R&D. And they devoted a lot of funds to research. And in responding to this, what the institution did then, the higher education institution did then, because there was a carrot, there was funding, they decided to now encourage staff to embark on research, multidisciplinary research, and they provided infrastructure and also a little bit of funding. One critical thing the university did also was to change the way staff are rewarded and recognized. Initially, the approach was they wanted to create critical mass in research. So therefore, they're more interested in quantity rather than quality, although quality was still also important. However, what happened was, after some time, after about within 3 to 5 years, the focus changed to quality of research and the impact of research and how you can translate your research to societal goals, and so on. So with this approach, with the critical mass that had already been built in the university, everyone responded well, and it was a positive thing. Today, when you look at National University of Singapore, globally is ranked about 25 in the world and is well recognized. Now, another thing that happened was the government didn't stop there. In addition to pumping money, they set up National Research Foundation. And the goal was to bring companies, institutions together like in triple helix that we are talking about now. And they pumped a lot of money into this. And one of the flagship programs which was set up that time was called Competitive Research Program Scheme, in which group where people form competitive team across institution with industry participation, and there's a call for proposal in which everyone writes a white paper to actually demonstrate how disruptive a technology that they are trying to propose and how it benefits Singapore. So for example, annually they receive close to about 100 proposals, but they shortlist about 10 of them, ask them to develop it into real full proposal, and it's reviewed internationally by both people in industry and people in academia. And through this, they select about 5 or 6 projects a year, fund them to the tune of 5 to 10 million, and put in place funding for TTO to work with them and imbibe in the project. And I've been fortunate to lead one of the team for over 5 years. And so I know at that point, my engagement with TTO was significant, even at the onset, throughout the project, and in terms of looking at things which are transferable in terms of technology transfer, IP, as was just discussed now. And as a result of this, following the end of the project, actually a Singapore Synchronia Consortium has been formed, which bring multinational companies to Singapore to work with local researchers to advance non-volatile memory technology. I also involved as co-peer in others. So I think I will stop here. Hopefully that will give you a taste that as we discuss triple helix model, the government play a part, the industry play a part, but also the institution needs to play a part. And for people in the university, actually the critical thing, the decision makers, they need to set up policies that will encourage innovation and enterprise, and also encourage staff to work on tangible projects. So I'm going to stop here. Tope, yeah.
Thank you, Kule. What I hear you say, and you laid it out very well, you brought out the triple helix approach. So there is a trigger that the government provides, which helps to foster a culture, helps to promote problem-solving research. And there was a need to also initially start with building a critical mass of researchers, eventually beginning to streamline into quality. There was an approach intentionally through legislation and funding to bring academia and industry together, tie them together, work on joint projects aimed at solving these problems. And all of those were put within the context of a national agenda to transition from a manufacturing base to a knowledge economy using research and innovation. Thank you very much. That's very clear. Tom, let me come to you. I want you to start by sort of giving us the other picture of a TTO. Innova, as we've heard very clearly, is a university-based TTO, part and parcel of the university. The Oxford University Innovation, where you are managing director for 10 years, is a company, limited liability company. That's why you are managing director. You are not a professor, unlike Anna. So what does that, what's the difference? What accounts for that difference, and how does it enable you to work? We're not saying that one is better than the other. We're simply saying, talk us through that other perspective, and also touch a bit on what some of the things that Anna said and that Kunle has reinforced about the involvement of university leadership. How do they support that vision and arrive at going into that approach using that format? Over to you, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Hello to the fellow panelists and also the audience. It's wonderful to be with you. I am sitting at home near Oxford in the UK, and one of the very small benefits that has come out of the last 2 years is our familiarity and willingness to participate in these unusual forms of conference. So let me tell you a little bit about the story of technology transfer at Oxford. as the others have done, place it in a national context. So a bit of history. Up until 1985, there was an obligation for universities to talk to a central government agency if they had research ideas that could be commercializable, patented, licensed, etc. In 1985, that obligation was removed. And so from then on, universities were able to set up their own technology transfer activities. Now, there's an important point to make about the UK. The universities are independent charitable bodies. They are not public sector institutions. They're not part of the government. They're independent charitable bodies. Although, of course, they receive huge amounts of money from the government. But from 1985 onwards, technology transfer offices began to appear at the UK research universities, and Oxford set up a company in 1987. So that was the start of the formal technology transfer journey at Oxford University, 1987. Now, this business about us being a separate company rather than an administrative unit, if you go back to the thinking in 1987, but remember the world was a very different place then, the thinking was actually mainly about risk and managing risk. And this whole thing of patenting, licensing, spin-out companies was new and uncertain. And I think looking at the paperwork from that time, the genuine feel was, if we set this up as a separate limited company, if it all goes horribly wrong, then at least we just close down the company and it does not cause too much damage to the university. So that was really interesting. But roll on to where we are now, and there's a lot of debate about the pros and cons of a TTO being an administrative unit or a separate company. And as you said in your introduction, it's not the case that one is better than the other. And it always has to be very context specific. And if you look in the UK now, there are only a very small number of universities, let's say 5 or 6, and that have a separate wholly owned subsidiary company as their TTO. Most in the UK are still administrative units within the administration of the university. The benefits that come from having a company, and there are some, are mainly about the culture that you can develop within the organization, perhaps also about the people that you can bring in to the organization. So culture, you can make the culture more commercial. People, you can bring in people who are more commercial and interested in working for a company, whereas they might be hesitant about working for a university administration. It's not about paying people more money, because the salaries need to be equivalent to university administration salaries, or everyone in the administration and the university looks at the TTO people with resentment, and that's not good for any relationships. So I think it's about being able to develop a commercial business culture. And there's a very important point, is that if a university wants to do that, then it's a sensible thing to do. The main risk to manage for, in my opinion, if you do have a separate company, is the governance of the separate company. Okay, so it's owned by the university, but who is on the board of directors? What responsibilities does the company have to report to the university? And where there have been examples of tech transfer offices as separate companies, where things have tended to go wrong, it's because the relationship between the company and the university is not strong. The company maybe gets overexcited and ahead of itself, forgets it's owned by the university. And that it's vital, whether you are an administrative office or you are a separate company. A really important question is the technology transfer office doing what the university wants it to do? And that's a big dialogue, because what does the university want? Does it want this to be a very aggressive for-profit organization, or does it want to be more generalist and focused on impact from the results of research? So in Oxford, I mean, just coming back to the specific company, it was set up, named ISIS Innovation Limited. It was renamed Oxford University Innovation Limited 5 years ago. Its journey over those 30 odd years, it's developed, but the core of activity is commercial. It's about patenting, licensing research results out to new companies, to new existing companies, to new spin-out companies and existing companies all over the world. And one of the things that has developed over time is the focus has shifted from being about generating income or profit to being about generating impact. What are the benefits to society? And so the scope of the company has broadened in terms of not just being science and technology based, but now also trying to provide support services to the arts and humanities and social sciences, and thinking how it can benefit the whole of the research community in Oxford. So that's probably enough from me for now, but I can come back and talk more about this and government role as you wish.
All right, thank you, Tom. So Anna, for some time now, I'm coming back to you about that issue we mentioned. Every time I read up on Innova, I always marvel that how did this university sort of see around the corner, see the future? Before the innovation law came out, Unicamp had changed. So what was the motivation for changing from what it was before to adopting and rebranding as Innova, long before there was a regulatory requirement for it, one? Then how would you say the university leadership has supported Innova? What's the nature of the relationship? Because obviously there must be a way in which, and you've mentioned the innovation policy, maybe you can share a bit on how that works so that we can distill further into the factors that were responsible for Innova's success story.
It's a great question. First of all, we are not apart from the university. Innova is part of the university. So there's no relationships. We are the university. So that I think it's a different kind of governance. But we, as Tom said, the innovation issues through the agency must serve to the researchers of the university. And then we cannot disturb the researchers. We have to serve them. And this is what Innova was created for, to help researchers to learn about entrepreneurship, innovation entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship. And as an agency, we start doing that. And we really reached some point of equilibrium that the researchers recognized the Innova department as an agency that helped them to do things happen. And this is the important thing that happened since the TTO, the office, changed to the innovation agency. We created a culture, a real ecosystem, and a culture for being entrepreneurship. That this culture did not exist before 2003. It's
Okay.
just one more,
Step in the evolution.
sorry?
As a one more step in the journey.
Yes, yes. So Innova working with intellectual property, tech transfer, entrepreneurship culture training, and having a park with the startups and spin-outs inside the campus. It was a great deal for us, a great exemplar to all researchers, and things happened in the last 10 years because of this culture, this different culture that we created inside Unicamp that is different from another universities in Brazil. This is why Unicamp is an exemplar to the Brazilian universities and for Latin America. I think the secret is working together, training, cultural change of mind, and having a park inside the campus. It's really important thing.
Thank you very much. I think what I got from that essentially is that the culture in the university made the journey to be easier. The focus on entrepreneurship helped to sort of get people along. And then Innova itself was positioned as a service provider. You recognize that you cannot dictate to researchers, you have to support them. And when you are doing that and making those offers, eventually they came to recognize that, yes, Innova is our partner. Very useful lesson. Caroline, let me come to you now. I want you to respond to two things from what Anna has shared. One thing from what Anna has shared, and one thing that we keep hearing in the Nigerian university system, in which you are a role player. So the complaint that those of us in industry get from researchers is that we are doing research, we have output and prototypes, but industry is not coming. Now, we've heard from Innova that they don't wait for industry to come, but they have an aggressive marketing program that showcases what they are doing and that offers the value both to researchers internally and to industry. From the perspective of a researcher, we would like your take on that in the Nigerian context. If we know of similar situations or how we can change that culture, that is one. Second is, it's a two-pronged question. You are also the director of the EDC at your university, and you've heard about how Innova has an integrated approach, fusing entrepreneurship with the science and technology park, with technology permitting faculty to own spin-out companies. Talk to us, relate the program you are running, your academipreneurship program, student entrepreneurship, situate it within that context and give us an idea of anything you might have picked up from how Innova is doing theirs that you think might be useful to EDCs in Nigeria. Over to you. I hope you understand the two dimensions of the question.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Good afternoon. And I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Well, I think it's a mouthful. You would have given me one before the other so that I don't mix them up. But taking off from the presentation by Professor Aina Mariam, I was quite impressed and excited, especially looking at how Innova has stood out even before the regulation that came, and the impacts and the milestones that you have made. I'll say big congratulations. Then if we look at that from our own perspective in Nigeria, we would find out we have quite differences. We want to go back to history, trying to understand. In 2005 specifically, the Nigerian Academic Unit 2 found that it was necessary that entrepreneurship be taught in the Nigerian universities. And entrepreneurship was taught. That was what brought about the establishment of entrepreneurship centers in the universities specifically.
No,
but
can you focus on academipreneurship?
Okay, yes.
Related to how Innova approaches entrepreneurship, student entrepreneurship, and see if there are similarities or differences.
Okay. So in the teaching of the entrepreneurship, we looked at it as a researcher. I'm a member of the Advanced Engineering and Innovation Research Group. We had been working on quite some research works, and we found that there was a gap. We had a lot of creative ideas that were developed. In the labs, they were not commercialized. There was this gap between the industry, the commercialization of our products. And 2017, just about 3 years back, we sat down, the university formed a committee made up of some other members. To have Professor Sunday, myself, Professor Ibinu, and the then director of the Entrepreneurship Center. And we came up with support from some our partners, GIZ specifically with the Setting to Poor program in Nigeria. We came up with what we call academipreneurship. And what is academipreneurship? Academipreneurship is basically turning academic ideas, turning academic findings into research. It's coined from academia and entrepreneurship. So we simply turn our academic ideas, innovation concepts, and research into viable businesses and products. For us here in Federal University of Technology, we started the academipreneurship. And in academipreneurship, we had 3 major points that we look at it. We look at the academipreneurship at startup. Considering the fact that we have a lot of our final year products, research works in the shelves, not being commercialized, we decided that we could have a startup, and that is why we have the academipreneurship startup loop. It's a 3-month training program of coaching and training, where students, young students with business ideas, go through this loop on business training and being able to support. So after the academipreneurship, we also have the Incubation Hub. So right now in Federal University of Technology, we have the FoodTech Incubation Hub. The Incubation Hub take these young entrepreneurs out from the loop into the hub. In the hub, we provide services in the hub, which include training, support, mentoring, and ability to be able to access grants. But academipreneurship does not stop there. We also have what we call the immersion program. We have the immersion program of academipreneurship, where we have a synergistic integration with academia. Over the past 2 years, in trying to run academipreneurship and sell academipreneurship, we have visited quite some companies in Nigeria, where we work with them, trying to tell them this is what we have. And like one thing I will pick from what Prof said is that aggressive marketing. I think we are doing marketing, but we are not fully very aggressive, and we're going to work more on doing that aggressive marketing. But for now, we have quite a lot of patents in the university. We have quite a lot of jobs. And we have some that we are working presently with some companies, trying to help them solve their problem. The other part of academipreneurship, like I said, we have the startup, we have the immersion program, where we exchange academics and the industry, and we have students going to the industry. And we have the third one, which we call the business clinic. The business clinic is yet to take off, but what we intend to do in the business clinic is to have an expo and a forum where the industry can come and see what we have, what we can do. Federal University of Technology is a specialized university, and we have so much.
Permit me if I come in again. So what I'm hearing from is that you two, you are active in engaging with industry.
Yes, presently.
You have some patents that you are working towards commercialization, that you people who have ideas and help, and particularly have a hub for food technology. So we should be expecting new products to eventually come out of that process and new technologies to be mainstreamed into the market. Is that what the end goal is?
Yes, that is the end goal. The end goal for us, presently in setting up Academicship, we have a 5-year goal. And that 5 year is that we would have, in these 5 years, we would have 100 startups, we would have products, businesses that are fully started, would be able to support startups and new products. Those are some of our milestones that we have set before us.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Kunle, I'm back to you now, and I thank I thank the gentleman. Let me see if I can get his name. Bethel Ugochukwu Ukazu, who asked me that we should give a background on the Nigerian situation. Okay, so you are in a very unique position. You are a Nigerian academic and researcher, and you've worked globally for the past 22, 23, 24 years. So I'm going to give this perspective, and with your understanding of both the Nigerian situation and what occurs abroad, I would want to start taking feedback and viewpoints on different angles of how we can go about it. So it's not as if Nigerian universities do not have technology transfer offices. We have an agency here called NUTAP. It is responsible for patenting. And they have established 38 what they call IPTTOs, Intellectual Property and Technology Transfer Offices. They have in 38 universities. But my understanding is that those IPTTOs are not very functional. That is one. The second thing that we need to relate it to is, so how many universities on their own have independently established technology transfer offices or have emphasized technology transfer in their work? Now, the research proposition in Nigeria is largely driven from our understanding. It results largely in publications. I think there's a phrase called publish or perish. Promotion is done on the basis of how many papers you have published. It is only recently that the Tertiary Education Trust Fund has started beaming a searchlight on promoting problem-solving research and development. That is to go beyond merely publishing. So why is it that universities are not following through or are not yet following through with this drive towards problem-solving research by establishing the institutions or the frameworks that are necessary to then take this research through to commercialization stage? I ask that question because our interaction with Nigerian researchers also show a mindset that industry is not coming. Industry is not patronizing our research output. And what I've heard from Anna and from Tom is that there is a process to engage industry, that it might also be useful for government to come in at some point to stimulate those conversations. So would you share perspectives, being an academic who understands Nigeria and who has worked in those cultures? Where should we be starting from? You mentioned critical mass.
Yeah.
What are the points that you will pick out from our situation, and what should we be doing to get technology transfer to make it stronger in our higher education system? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is quite an interesting question, and it's also loaded. So the first thing I will say is, when we talk of technology transfer or in terms of invention, in academics, people can invent anything because we have academic freedom and you can look at any problem. So whether it's interesting to company is a different ball game. And also, unless you are commercializing, you are setting up a new industry, we need to start with the first basis, understand what the companies are doing. Make sure that whatever you are doing is compatible with the sort of technology they are developing. For example, now, if a technology is based on gold and you are working on silver, unless it's so disruptive that there is a significant change, no company will want to change easily. So what I've learned over the years is, because filing a patent is not a problem, even getting it approved is not a problem per se, but whether it's relevant or it's useful is a different ballgame. I'm not saying the patent in Nigeria, they are not useful, but you need, if you work with industry, and that's why it's important, it's a long-term relationship, because when you work in industry, you need to work with them so that they tell you what they are doing, what are the problems that they are trying to solve, so that when you solve it, you don't even need to try so hard to get them to embark on it. When we set up the Singapore Synchronous Consortium, it took us some time to get there. In fact, initially, we were doing things that way, that is, we have a lot of ideas, but when you talk to industry, you find out that even though your idea is good, but it's not compatible with their setup. And therefore, how do you integrate? And unless it's a disruptive technology, no company want to invest in a new approach that doesn't really add up. So that's one thing. So my own approach is, now that the government is involved, researchers in the university also need to know that they need to learn from industry. Because if a product is already in the market, unless you value add, if you are trying to copy or do the same thing, it's difficult. It's like people working in robotics now. Companies are advanced a lot. If you can work in robotics and you move things around, it doesn't mean that company will adopt it. So at least I work in high tech, and a lot of things that we do now, we are looking at technology that will come into effect 5 years from now. Companies are not doing it, so they are interested in it. They are like looking at it. If these people come up with something good, they want to position. So even when we file patent, the university keep the patent as base patent so that at least we can protect, and they are willing to talk to us. So I believe in Nigeria, we have the brain power. I was trained in Nigeria before I left almost close to 30 years ago. I strongly believe that we have what it takes. All we need to do is get the right mindset in the university, and the university administrator can set the tone, because at the end of the day, as a way of incentivizing those who are successful, they can be role model. So just to summarize, the key thing is people can file patent. Definitely, if it's something that industry are interested in, they will chase you around. But if we are doing something we want company to adopt, the first thing is to partner with them so that we understand what they are doing, because unless you are close to company, whatever they publish or they are talking about now, they are things they've done 2 or 3 years ago. They won't tell you what they are doing. But when you sign non-disclosure agreement and they know that you are working together, then at the end of the day, they will tell you, and they are not everything they can do. They want you to do something because it's cheaper for them. If they don't need to pay your salary, they just give you certain things. They are willing to do that. So I am quite glad as a Nigeria that we are beginning to have this conversation, and with TED Fund, everything that is going in the right direction. If we have the policy in place for the vice chancellors and so on, to actually look at this holistically, how it's going to benefit the university in the long run is, if they do well, either through transfer of technology, And also one thing I want to mention is, it doesn't mean you can't publish your work. What I've learned working with technology transfer is, in fact, when you are submitting your publication, they can also file patent at the same time. And it's been, so you can eat your cake and have it. And working with the right technology transfer office, they will help you to make sure that they protect your invention in various jurisdictions. At the same time, one of the things I find is, yes, that's true.
So let me, what I infer from what you've said is that a technology transfer office is ideally positioned to be the matchmaker, to be constantly engaging with industry and filter their problems, understand their mindset, understand their language, and bring that back to colleagues who are researchers, who may not, because of the pressure of work, have time to be scouting around for industry partners. So they would also be the ones to be engaging the researchers, educating them, exposing them to the problems of industry and bringing the two together, facilitating those conversations that can result in a productive relationship. That's one function of the TTO. And you also think that we need to start this process at a high level, engaging vice chancellors, getting them to understand, and that speaks to the innovation policy that Anna has mentioned, that we need our universities to have innovation policies. All right, thank you very much. Tom, let me come to you with a question that will ride on what I just asked Kunle. And that question is, it is said that the other problem is that of funding, so that research can result in a prototype, but not every prototype results in commercial success. In fact, only a minority will do. So that gap between a prototype and the proof of concept, which is what makes it financially viable. There have been conversation around seed funding. Government, universities are even establishing seed funds now, government setting up all sorts of funding. What's your experience been like? And based on the perspective that I've shared, what's the UK experience, not your personal experience, been like? And based on the perspective that I've shared about Nigeria, is there a way we can use funding instruments to call attention and bring people into serious conversations on getting set for technology transfer? Can you share what the UK experience has been like in that area? And
yes,
that would also naturally get into what government does, but I realize it could be bigger than government. So over to you.
No, well, thank you. Thank you. And just a couple of reflections on what we've been talking about. We've been talking about supply from universities and universities pushing it out. We've been talking about demand or pull from industry and investors. And this combination of universities pushing it out and industry wanting to sort of pull it out as well. And this is where I think the triple helix is still valid, because you have research-based government and industry. And so I will come in a moment to government. But another reflection is it's a combination, I think, of culture, as has been mentioned, changing and developing the culture within the university, the leadership of the university, the vice chancellors, but also the academic community, but culture and money. Technology transfer, doing technology transfer, having a technology transfer office costs money, and somebody needs to pay for that. And it can be the university deciding to pay for it. But if a university has a decision or a choice between hiring more academics, more engineers, or more physicists, or more historians, or tech transfer, they usually hire more academics rather than developing the tech transfer. So it does need real vision from the university leadership to decide to invest in technology transfer, which is where government comes in. So in the UK, I would point just to three major government activities. In year 1999, 2000, the government set up a program called the University Challenge Seed Fund. Now that was the start of proof of concept funds, seed funds, filling the gap that we've heard about between university research and what industry or investors recognize as an investable proposition. And that program didn't cost very much money from the UK government. The Wellcome Trust, a large foundation, was also involved. And it had a dramatic effect in helping connect university researchers, tech transfer people, and investors, the venture capital community. So that was one. The second, and potentially more substantial, in year 2000, the government set up a program which was really about funding the third stream of activities at universities. So you have teaching, you have research, and you have this third thing in terms of wider engagement, impact, etc. So the HEIF, the Higher Education Innovation Fund, started. This is a central government funding program which allocates now about £250 million a year to all UK universities according to a formula. So the bigger, stronger research universities get more, and they might get £3 million a year. And that is to support technology transfer in its broadest sense, so knowledge transfer, knowledge exchange. It's to support higher education innovation activities within the university. So the government is providing direct finance to do that. The third one I will mention is an initiative which was not actually in universities, but has had a dramatic effect on universities, a tax incentive to encourage investors to put money into early stage high risk companies. So this is the EIS, the Enterprise Investment Scheme. This has been running for many years, and the tax advantage to an investor putting money into a certain type of company, but that includes university spin-outs, it includes early stage technology businesses. If the investment doesn't work out, then the tax benefits are substantial in terms of the investor not losing so much money if they can offset it against tax. And if the company makes a lot of money, the investors pay less tax on that. So that actually has had a dramatic impact as well. So, it's about, from a government point of view, it's about thinking, yes, what do we do in the university to support this? But also, what do we do with the other players in the innovation community, investors, industry? So do you have an R&D?
I ask you a quick slant on that question. So we know about government funding, but how has the experience been with venture capital, for instance? Is there any support for early stage venture capital to get involved in translating research output?
Yes, so there's another tax benefit program here in the UK called VCT, Venture Capital Trusts. And so again, the potential benefits to investors in venture capital trust funds, which are eligible to invest in early stage technology businesses, such as university spin-out companies, again, are very attractive. So you can look at a range of government interventions. Either, I like to say government gives with grants, but it takes away with tax. And you can turn the dial on both of those with very significant either positive benefits or sometimes negative benefits. Just to make one comment before handing back, I like to talk about the innovation community, because I think this is a helpful way for people in universities, but everybody else to and people in tech transfer offices to think about the challenge. So if you think about the technology transfer people at the center of their innovation community, who else is in that community? So you've got the university researchers, and you need to do lots of internal marketing to talk to them so they know about you. But you also need to do lots of external marketing to talk to everybody else who's involved. Industry, small, large, local, international, investors, local, international, government, local, national, international. Huge numbers of people in different institutions that you want to have a relationship with so that you can enjoy success as a tech transfer office. And just to come back to this point, yes, it's about culture in the university, and that grows with time, there's no doubt about it. But there comes a point where the university and the government has to recognize doing this costs money. Having technology transfer offices costs money. Who's going to pay?
Thank you very much, Tom. Anna, I'm coming back to you with a question that is specifically for you. During our previous conversation, you said to me you only became executive director of Innova a few months ago, maybe 4 months ago. And we look at the broad scope of what Innova is doing. It is the innovation agency that sits on top of intellectual property, engaging with industry, attracting joint projects. Congratulations, you have a good number of company-funded research projects and company-operated laboratories. You have spin-out companies in the Campinas areas. You are also supporting the student entrepreneurship process. So share your insights with us. The next phase of questions that we're going into is to look at what is the type of person, what skills does someone bring into technology transfer? Is there a particular personality type? Or how did you, as someone who was an inventor, you are now pushing technology transfer, what have you found out about the skill requirements to be successful in leading a technology transfer operation? Very quickly as we begin to round up this phase of questioning. Thank you.
Thanks, Tope. It was a great challenge for me to accept this encouragement. But I think previous experience is fundamental. I was also a director of a research center at Unicamp 10 years ago. And this research center treats with pharmaceutical companies that are big sharks in the ocean, and we are just fish swimming together. And that time, I developed lots of skills of conversation, and I studied a lot laws, and I have been to our attorney office all the time. That's what brings me to that position with a kind of, it's soft. But the skills are, you have to be a perfect interface between the external world and the internal world. I don't think our regulations are the best, because being a researcher, a full-time researcher, don't gives you the skills you need to be a to be a manager of innovation. But you have to study a lot. And the main point, Tope, is to know regulation and the laws, and then you have to adapt yourself and your team to new regulations as fast as you can. This is an important point, regulation. You have to have your leadership have to regulate all the possibilities for tech transfer to occur.
You have to be familiar with the regulatory environment and you have to keep ahead. Thank you very much. And it was good that you also mentioned that prior to managing technology transfer, you had led a research center. So you are actually working, engaging with industry. That enabled you to get a sense. So prior knowledge, prior background is required. Tom, let me, because you are the two technology transfer professionals we have here now, your own journey is not slightly, is significantly different. You spend the early part of your career in, I think, investment finance, and you've spent more than 30 years. So technology transfer in the UK is a profession. What would you recommend that if we are going to grow a crop of technology transfer professionals, where do we start from? Who do we need? What kind of skills? How do we grow them? Because as Kule mentioned, the issue of critical mass is still important. We can set up the offices, but if we don't have the right kind of people with the right kind of skills, growing at the right and appropriate levels, what would your insights be on those ones?
You mentioned my own introduction to this, and yes, I often think if I wanted to get into this now, I would not be able to. So I did geography at university, I worked in finance, and then I started in tech transfer a long, long time ago, when it was all very early and all very different. In terms of skills, I think you can look at attitude and aptitude. So attitude, so how you do things, aptitude, what you do and what you need to know. And certainly from an aptitude point of view, what do you need to know? There's quite a lot of technical information you need to know about, as was mentioned, regulatory environments, intellectual property, patent systems, licensing agreements, investment agreements, etc. And the thing is, you can learn that. You can be taught that, and you can learn it. You can read about it. You can have training programs, etc. You can learn it. On the attitude and how you do things, it's far harder to learn that. I think that's something that is natural and you're born with. Of course, you can develop and improve and change. But I think this point about attitude is, it's often referred to as a people business and a contact business, because tech transfer people are always talking with so many different types of people. We're talking to academics about their research. We're talking to investors about good investment propositions. We're talking about industry, about proof of concept development, prototyping, scale up, marketing products, etc. So we need to know a lot about a lot of things, but we also need to be able to communicate with different types of people. And I think that's really important on the attitude side of things. So what do you do? Well, it was interesting. In Oxford, we had a very clear approach of who we would hire into these offices. These were people who had a scientific background, so that they'd worked in universities, they'd done some science, hopefully a PhD. So they knew the culture of universities and they could have credibility talking to academics. But also they had left their university, they'd gone into business, they'd worked in industry, maybe in science roles, but maybe in marketing or business development. So again, they understood the culture of industry and business. And these are very different. The people are different, the objectives are different. So we hired people who had experience of both of those different sides, so could talk to everybody that was involved. Training is available now. And the way this started in the UK was the tech transfer, the sort of very early stage tech transfer people getting together, forming a group and talking to each other and learning. And that's evolved into Praxis Oril, which is a very strong UK-based tech transfer organization. In the US, there's Autumn, AUTM. In Europe, there's ASTP. One clear bit of advice I can give is for the the existing technology transfer people in Nigeria at the Nigerian universities to form a club, form the Nigerian Technology Transfer Association, or whatever you may want to call it. And all of the people who are currently doing the job get together from time to time, online, preferably face-to-face. And that's the way to build the community of practitioners, to share ideas, share pain, to learn from each other. And what happens is that gradually develops into a more structured and organized training program where you begin to think, okay, what are the skills we need to teach? What are the types of people we want to bring in? What does a good job description look like? What are the competencies required? And once you've got that national TTO organization, or the trade body or professional association, whatever it may be called, you've got the start of the community, and you can learn what you need to learn, because learning tech transfer in the UK or learning tech transfer in the US, some of it's relevant, some of it's useful, but a lot of it is just not relevant.
Contextual. So it has to be contextualized to suit our environment. Thank you very much for that. Caroline, quick one. This is a bit of a diversion. While you were speaking, you mentioned that Federal University of Technology, Mina, you have a 5-year plan for developing the academipreneurship program. Can you very quickly talk us through the future elements of that plan, and if any of these discussions we've been having can have a bearing? For instance, would you be looking at establishing a science and technology park? Because we've seen that there is a close relationship between entrepreneurship development and research work. So what are the main elements of that plan that is yet to be implemented? And what would you say this discussion can help you to sort of boost or bolster that plan a bit more? Very quickly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay. Part of our goals, that is the goals that we have set up for academipreneurship, is to have incubation hub in our different schools, a well-equipped academipreneurship incubation hub, capable of incubating and nurturing startups at a time. We also have the establishment of 50 successful startup business over that period of 5 years. We also look at the generation of over 200 indirect and direct employment over the period of 5 years. So our timeline also includes the conversion of over 500 innovative academic ideas into business ideas over that period of 5 years. And this interaction, I will tell you, has been very useful in actualizing our future plans. Looking at bringing up this business, the incubation hub that we presently have, the plan is that we would have what we call an acadomat, like a hub, a space. We call it acadomat. It's going to be like a business, it's a park, a science park, not just science park, but a all solution park. So the all solution park, I mean, is that, like I told you, what we have not implemented is the aspect of business clinic. Yes, we call it business clinic. And in our schedule of activities, the hub started in June. So I was saying we're not talking yet because we want to set some roots down. So the hub started in June. And this business clinic will be having, we'll call the industries and say, come to, we would want an interaction. We often have an interaction with the community, with the business, with our partners, to see what we are doing and to be able to offer solutions. So we are going to have that for different units, not just for, we call it food tech. That is Federal University of Technology. So our pack is not just going to be for science. We have for mechatronic engineering, we have the artificial advanced engineering and research group. We have for food, because presently we have the African Center for Excellence for Mycotoxin and Food Safety. So we have researchers there. So we want to have business clinic. So when we talk of business clinic, that is our own way. We are trying to bring the academia and the industry together.
So I'm getting two things from what you've just shared.
Yes,
I can relate this to what Tom mentioned about the importance of an innovation community.
Yes,
funders, people who are going to support those startups because there will be need for funding, about existing businesses whose problems you are translating into research propositions.
Into research, yes.
And I also think I get that need for an innovation community, but I also get a sense that if your university were to now establish, develop an innovation policy and establish a strong TTO, that will give a boost to what you in the Entrepreneurship Development Center are doing. It will boost that plan. So maybe you might want to factor that in as a recommendation as a University of Technology anyway. Kunle, my last question goes to you. We've spoken, and it's still in terms of our capacity, we've spoken about the skill sets and the backgrounds that will help people to make a career in technology transfer, develop the expertise for it. So it's not just a title and it's not just an office. It is the quality, the software element, the quality of the work that happens. When Anna was presenting, she referenced something. Innova had a relationship with Cambridge Enterprise. I learned about that relationship about a year or two ago, and I tried to unpack it. It was a capacity building proposition that took several years. But one of the things that I found most interesting was the training was not just directed at the technology transfer professionals. There were actually a suite of training programs designed for researchers, teaching them about entrepreneurship, teaching them about how to engage with industry, speaking the language, understanding. What would you say are the critical requirements for the Nigerian researcher in terms of if we want to get them to be working more successfully with industry, if we want them to be owning, eating from the fruit of their research by owning shares in spin-out companies, what do we need to do to bring them up to that level?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. And the way I would look at it is we need to have an attitude that we can all learn. So for example, now researchers can learn from how technology transfer office operate. I learned a lot through the process. In fact, initially, a lot of us were not too happy because we thought we were doing a great thing. And when you go out there and they ask you questions, they do all sorts of things. So, but with time, you begin to speak the same language. Also, institution, what they, at least they did for us was, they just like formal training, this one is informal, in which they have opportunity for you to sign up for example, if you want to learn more about how to transfer your technology, about commercialization, they put it there. But in the university, because we have academic freedom, a lot of people won't take it. And as long as, like I mentioned before, there is a way in which you can incentivize people to move along that direction, because a lot of things will not change. And I'm just speaking up from a researcher point of view or a professor in the university. If the university is going to only evaluate me based on the paper I publish and so on, in terms of for promotion and so on, then I have to do what I need to do to get that. But if university recognize that this is important and they factor that in terms of time allocation, because if you spend a lot of time in technology transfer, it takes you away from doing active research. All those things at higher level, policies need to put in place so that people who are really interested, because it's not meant for everyone, but people who are interested in it can do it. And why I'm excited is that if we get the formula right, as a Nigerians, I know us, how entrepreneurs we can be. We can do it. It's just to get it right. And in a lot of ways, certain things are imbibed in us already. So it's just to harness those. But for people working in the university, I think probably the True Tech Fund, they should probably try and bring the university vice chancellor or people, deputy vice chancellor in terms of research in to brainstorm, not adopting the same approach, but to look at different geographic locations and come up with a framework that help researchers to see that we are working together to come and go, and to also see a pathway whereby there is career advancement. So for example, now some people can be promoted based on technology transfer. Not so, because if you are transferring technology, maybe you have IP portfolio and so on, that can count a lot. So, and it has to be that the academic community recognizes that, because the people who are evaluating staff, they might not buy into this technology transfer thing. And therefore, young researchers will not want to do that. And one thing which I would also like to mention is, it's actually good when, if we set the culture, over time, this thing will change. In Singapore, for example, there was resistance from senior professor to start with, because once you're a senior professor, you can do anything you want. It doesn't matter too much. But if you hire assistant associate professor and you direct them along that path, within 2 or 3 years, because assistant professor wants to be associate wants to be full professor, they will migrate towards that. And if you put in place training, and some of this training with this online now, they don't even need to travel, it can be done. And also try and expose them to places where this has been done, because one of the things we benefited from was my university, they partner with MIT, and they had a program over 2 years in which I traveled to MIT, MIT people traveled to Singapore, and we jointly supervise students. Through that process, we embrace cultural differences and things, how things are done. And this has led to a number of technology being transferred into industry.
Thank you very much. That's been useful. So we'll go very quickly to the question sessions. I think some people have questions directly for some of our panelists. So I'm going to be sending those to you. We want to keep to time, so we'll probably only have 20 minutes for the question session. Adaeze has a question for Anna. She says that, is there any work you do with government, and how does government support UNICAMP's work?
Sort of, I don't know if I understand. Are you, Daisy?
Does Nova work with government, and do you receive any support from government?
Okay. The University of Campinas is a state university. We have support of the state of São Paulo, and the research is not supported by the state, but we have some agency, federal agents that supports our research in about 60 to 7% of the support comes from federal government, and just the another part from companies and from the state.
The second question is also, okay, I think I have 3 straight questions for you. That's interesting. So the second one, in your presentation, you mentioned an increase in the number of industry-sponsored research projects. How did you achieve that success? What did you do that got more industry people coming to sponsor your research projects?
It's a policy of the federal government. We have the companies has tax benefits for doing that. So that's the point.
That was the incentive, the trigger that unlocked a lot of interest. And the third one for you is, okay, who owns the patents in your university? Is it, sorry, the second question was from Dr. Abiodun Benga-Inori. Interestingly, he works for the Innovation Unit of University of Lagos. And the third question for you is from Emeka Iwela. He wants to know about the ownership structure of your patent. So a researcher is the one who carries out the research. By the time it is patented, who owns the patent to the research output?
It's the university. The university owns the intellectual property developed by the research.
Okay. Tom, I found you dealt extensively with that in your book. So you might also want to add a bit to that context. You made recommendations. Maybe you should share the recommendations with the House. How should the patent be shared between university researcher and everybody? Very quickly.
I think this question of who owns the intellectual property ties into the broader question of incentives, which has been mentioned. And incentives are very, very important. And we can look at incentives for tech transfer in three ways. We can look at the sort of non-financial cultural incentives of leadership, messaging, how kudos is distributed across the organization. Do people get praise for technology transfer? We can look at it in terms of career progression, as has been mentioned, how these things are taken into account in terms of promotion. And we can look at it financial incentives. And that's really where this question of ownership of intellectual property, I mean, there's the one thing about ownership, there's another thing about who gets the benefits from it. So in UK university, it is typical for the university to own the intellectual property. Now, for researchers, that's a good thing because the university also pays for the patent costs and the marketing and the legal aspects of the licensing transaction. And then if money starts to flow from that patent and those license agreements, there is usually a set of rules about how much money the inventors get, the contributors, how much money the university and the department get. And very, very typically, the inventors and the researchers involved in a project get about 1/3 of the income. So there is a debate to be had. You can say, yes, the university owns it. The university provides technology transfer support and patenting budget, and the researchers receive about 1/3 of the income. Or you can say the researchers own it themselves. They have to invest tens of thousands of pounds in getting a good patent position. They need good marketing experience. They need to spend a lot more time than has already been mentioned in doing the technology transfer. They might need legal support, and then they might get more of the money. So there are things that you can weigh up. I think on balance, particularly when you look at the law of the land and what that may have to say about it, it is very sensible from the researcher's point of view to allow the university to own the intellectual property as long as the university is investing in its technology transfer capability, is investing in patenting and marketing and licensing and transactions, because there's no upfront cost for the academic researchers, and they will get a decent share of the money. So those are how the sort of pros and cons of that usually weigh out. There's one more point to make about spin-out companies. So yes, it's very important for academic researchers to be allowed to be shareholders in their own spin-out companies, because that's another direct potential financial incentive for them to get involved. But the question of incentives in that very broad range of aspects is really important.
Excellent. So I hear you and Anna say essentially the same thing, and how I can unpack that is patenting is one thing. What is important for the researchers is that even if the university owns the patent, the researchers who carried out the work still get to benefit from any financial rewards that come out of it, be it in a spin-out company or a share of the licensing fees or royalties. That is interesting and a good clarification. Kunle, I've got questions for you as well. This is from Salihu AA, who speaks about how the concept of triple helix being a good one, but that how do we get the three institutions to collaborate, government, industry, academia. And I think I heard that from 2 or 3 people looking specifically at the Nigerian situation. That, yeah, it's all well and good. We're talking about triple helix, but how can we get government, academia, and industry together? There's some work going on in that process, but because you particularly emphasize that, I will let you speak to it first.
Yes, I think because of what I know is going on now with TETFund trying to bring this together, if the government, the Nigerian government, see this as a priority, that's one pillar solved. The other pillar, which is quite important, and is the university themselves. And that one, they can start right now. Because if you want the industry to come, you need to have a value proposition. What are you offering? Unless we have technology right now that they are interested in, it will amount to a waste of time. So like I mentioned before, before Singapore begins to attract company to come, we needed to do something first so that when people come, you have something to show. And also with the technology transfer office, if it's set up, to begin to bring people together, there has to be relationship. Most companies will not want to work unless, but one thing that is not really discussed now is there has to be research agreement. Because if, and how to deal with multi-parties, let's say you are working in an industry now, and if you disclose something that benefits others, and so there are all sorts of legal implications. So my own approach will be with the TETFund leading the way in terms of bringing things together from, hopefully that would lead to a framework from government. The second pillar is the university can start now, and there's no point in reinventing the wheel. We can look at model that has worked, and every university now, they want to improve their ranking. If you look at it now, those countries where the university ranking has improved, what are they doing right? Because part of this will give you the answer. And the value proposition for university is if they are interested in improving their ranking, they do the right thing, they can only work with their staff. And if they encourage staff to begin to do research and hopefully prioritize impact over quantity with time, also encourage translational type of research, invest in TTO as has been mentioned, a lot of things will come into place. There's no point in talking of industry coming if we have nothing to offer because they want to make money, they are doing something now. We have university already, some of them are doing research with proper policy framework. They can aggressively begin to do this now and getting to know what industry needs. Also, one thing is we need to understand the local market. It's easy if you are dealing with, it's difficult to ask a US company to come to Nigeria now to start something. But if you have a local company that is doing something, if we understand the technology and university can value add either by removing bottleneck or redundancy in what they do, those are low-hanging fruits that can be tapped easily. And with time, all you just need to have is few success stories. A lot of companies will come in and jump in. So as a Nigerian, I'm very, very excited. I hope the momentum will continue and university will really, instead of one other thing is, it's not about competition. In fact, in the Singapore context, a lot of our projects, because we have the national focus in mind, if we have a team in one university and another team in another university, instead of competing, we say, let's work together. Let's leverage on complementary expertise to drive the agenda forward. When we get the funding, the two universities can decide on how they are going to share it. And with incentive in place, things will move very, very fast.
Thank you very much, Kule. So the import of what you are saying, and it is authentic coming from you as a Nigerian academic, is that our researchers in Nigeria should no longer be complaining that industry is not coming. We're doing research, industry is not patronizing us, that they should put in the work, universities should put in the work, that we don't even need to wait for government. The universities themselves should begin right now to develop those systems and structures. And because of the high level undertaking, TED Fund leading on the research agenda, the National Economic Summit Group that has entered into industry-academia relationship, we can engage with government to start unlocking more value. Thank you. I will be quoting a lot of what you are saying now to respond to the accusations we get that you people are not coming. We've done the research. There is a comment from a good friend of mine, Dr. Adams Adeza. He's actually a Nigerian as well, like you, but he's the director of the Global Entrepreneurship Research and Innovation Center at University Malaysia Kelantan. Now, that university is one of the best in Malaysia, and it was also established by the government purposely as an expression of their commitment to the fourth industrial revolution. It was started as the first entrepreneurial university in Malaysia, and our own Adams Adeza is directly responsible for managing entrepreneurship and innovation there. So he picked something from your comments, and his key takeaway from what you've said is about reorganizing the reward culture, the reward system. How we reward academics and researchers, that we should expand beyond merely rewarding them for publications, that part of what will drive, like you said, the attitudinal change, the cultural change, is if we start rewarding people for this. And I also want to take something from what you said to give to Caroline, and that is, you don't expect an American company to come to Nigeria and be doing this. The research we are doing must speak to local problems, must be contextualized. Caroline, I heard you mention twice that you have a hub for food technology. I wonder if, and I want to give Food Mina this task. Some years ago, we had a cassava policy that resulted in Nigeria becoming one of the largest producers of cassava. And the reason we did it was twofold. So we could be exporting cassava and its byproducts, and so that we could reduce the volume of cassava byproducts that we import into Nigeria. These byproducts include sweeteners and industrial starch. So how can we, as Nigeria, be the largest producer of cassava, and we are still importing $500 million worth every year of industrial starch? That is a food technology problem. Now, the second thing I'm going to say on that, which government has done, but which maybe universities were not aware of or did not take notice, was that government also wanted to increase the domestic consumption of cassava and its byproducts. So there was a legislation that says that everybody who is using flour, we import flour, that they should be mixing it with 10% of cassava flour. So you can import your wheat flour, but reduce the quantity. That was something that stimulated research in the sugarcane value chain in Brazil, when they started using ethanol, they started mixing ethanol with petrol, and that suddenly increased the demand for ethanol going all the way back to sugarcane. And a lot of research output has now created a very large industry for ethanol and sugarcane in Brazil. Now, the industrial starch we're talking about, there is only one company in Nigeria, and it is owned by Flour Mills of Nigeria, that produces high quality cassava flour. Every other company that has attempted to do it, they are not producing to the right quality. So all our flour millers are not buying that. And as a result, everybody, we've not been able to keep up with the 10% mixture. We're doing only 5%. Now that's a market that already exists, that is waiting to be filled. But there is a gap in quality, and that is a food technology problem. So a few months from now, we're going to have a very friendly conversation to know what you have done in that regard. And in 2 years, maybe that is going to be one of the very first success stories that we would celebrate in this regard. I want to thank every one of you, and I want to thank our audience as well. Let me provide a perspective, then I will summarize, and then we can all go. That perspective is, we had realized the need to foster closer collaboration between government, industry, and academia. And 3 years ago, almost to the day, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, the National Universities Commission, entered into a memorandum of understanding, the first formal memorandum of understanding at a systemic level to promote collaboration between academia and industry. Fortunately, the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, which was developing a proposition to ramp up research and development, entered and supported this proposition massively. So it is now a joint collaboration between Tertiary Education Trust Fund, National Universities Commission, and the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And the result of that was the establishment of what we call the Nigeria Triple Helix Roundtable. So we host these innovation dialogues annually, and the idea is to have these conversations, expand the networks of relationships, and prepare a report that we can then use to engage with government to say, here are the policy options that are coming out of this. Fortunately, out of this conversation, there are policy options for government, there are policy options for universities, there is information for industry as well, because we do have those tax incentives that we now need to start championing towards this process. So yes, there is a platform. We have just been told by our audience that we need to activate that platform and get on with the game. And Pule, I think we've had this conversation not once, not twice. We will tap into the available expertise, enthusiasm, and capability of every one of us. And we're looking forward to sustaining the drive. Anna, I also said to you much earlier that we would expand the scope of Innova's engagement and Unicamp's engagement beyond Latin America, beyond Brazil. I am aware that you've run training programs for 14, 15 Brazilian universities for a few years, and we would come to you to have a structured proposition where Innova can support our universities. Yes, we will contextualize, as Tom has said, but we have similarities. Brazil, Nigeria, 200 million population, tropical environment, and there are things we can learn from you. Tom, with 3 decades or more in this field, there are a number of things that we can learn from you and your experience. It was not an accident that we kept posting. Every time you were speaking, we showed the book that you authored. I have read, I can't count the number of books I've read on technology transfer, commercialization, spin-outs. I find yours to be very accessible, and you found a way to cover a broad number of topics, and I absolutely have no problem in recommending it as a read to all our universities, our researchers, and anybody who's looking at doing things in technology transfer. 1 minute for you before I close up. I think, Caroline, you are raising your hand. You are muted.
Yes, Dr.
Right.
I just wanted to make a clarification.
Okay.
You know, I said food tech. Food tech means FUT tech. That's Federal University of Technology.
Not food technology.
No, Incubation Hub.
No problem.
However,
yes.
However, we have a unit on food. Yes, we have for ICT, we have for engineering.
So I've just given you a
so
research problem.
I'll be getting ready for you.
Please, we will follow up on that. And the point is noted, we will stand corrected. So to wrap up, my understanding from this conversation is, one, culture is important.
Yes.
We can't get it done without culture. Second, culture would not emanate overnight. It is work in progress, and it is a process. We need high-level engagement on a triple helix foundation that we must bring government, industry, academia together. We need triggers, such as a government regulation like you had in Singapore, or a funding instrument that will encourage, motivate, and mobilize people. But we don't even need to wait for that trigger. Universities can start addressing localized problems and start organizing themselves. And in that process, we should consider the establishment of a professional body, so that for people who are involved or who plan to be involved in technology transfer, so that gradually we can begin to build the capacity that is required. It is important that we engage university leaders at a very high level, vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors, to start that conversation. It is also important that we examine the reward system to start driving younger academics towards technology transfer. But we must realize that not everybody will be interested or is cut out for technology transfer. Therefore, the role of the TTO is to support. It is not to lord it over the researchers. It is not to instruct them. It is to work with them, to support them, and wait for them to come and say, yes, we are interested in going this route of commercializing this technology that we're working on. There are a few other things, and when we put the report together, everybody who registered for this event will receive, and all our panelists will receive a copy of that report, and that will now lead us to fashioning out the next steps. I can also announce that our next dialogue will focus on something that we touched on very briefly here, and it was deliberate that we touched on it very briefly because we've dedicated an entire session to it. And it is, the topic of that one is technology and innovation financing. So that if we look at how to ramp up this proposition, how to get people to take it seriously, and how to come into the game, that what are those instruments that are available to us to fund? As Thomas said, it is not cheap to run a technology transfer office. So what motivation do we need? So that in a few years, we can share success stories like Innova, and some of our own technology transfer practitioners would be the ones that will then be hosting sessions like this for people from other countries within Africa who are considering embarking on that journey that the UK has been on for years and that Brazil has made a success of for a while. And with that, to our panelists, I am very grateful on behalf of the Triple Helix Roundtable, on behalf of the Economic Summit Group, the Nigerian University, the National Universities Commission, and TED Fund. We say thank you. And to our audience who principally come from the research community, administrators, and industry, the journey is just starting. So hopefully we'll see you during our next session, but it will not just end in talk. We expect policy actions and significant outcomes to result from this. And with that, as my last word, I say thank you to everyone and do enjoy the rest of the day. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.